So welcome everyone to the Friday webinar series on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. So Debbie McRae has joined our team as the other facilitator for the Friday afternoon webinars, and we're thrilled to have her. She's a colleague of Matt Wheeler, so if you've been attending Matt's, you know him, and if you were joining previously with Kim Buck, she works right alongside Kim Buck, and she was one of the early adapters of the Prodependent lens. So so the new book that Kim is co-authoring with Dr. Rob Weiss is coming out next year, probably the second quarter, and we're really excited about that. But Debbie is using it with real people, and seeing the results of that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Debbie, and we look forward to helping you each. Make sure you put your questions in the Q&A for us, and we'll make sure we ask and answer them. But we're glad to have you here live, and for those that are joining on YouTube later, come join us live when you can.
Thanks, Tammy. It's so good to be here. I am very passionate about this. I mentioned briefly the last couple of times we've met that I had my own experiences with betrayal trauma 20 years ago when there wasn't all this information out there. So I oftentimes come to this webinar with a couple of perspectives. First of all, from running a group that is very based in the Prodependence model for the partners, so the betrayed partners, as well as what I didn't have when I went through it years ago and what would have been helpful. And so that's what I like to start out each time we meet, kind of with a teaching piece that hopefully will help you understand a little bit better what you're going through, what the experience is. And as Tammy mentioned, I'm fortunate enough to work alongside with Kim Buck. And so I've kind of been with her as she's talked about this process of putting this book together, because we've taken the Prodependence model and we've literally applied it in the group that I run each week. And I'm seeing such phenomenal results as we apply the concepts in real life for the partners. And I just had somebody tell me yesterday, one of my clients said, it's just like all of a sudden I have felt this shift in me. She goes, can't even describe it. It's like I've gone from feeling like I'm either in crisis or I'm in my trauma all the time to all of a sudden I'm starting to feel a little more normal again. She goes, I can't put my finger on when it happened, but exactly. I went, oh, that's exactly where we want to get you. Yes, pat yourself on the back and be so proud. So today I thought what I'd do is I want to kind of validate and spend some time validating the experiences that you go through, especially when you're experiencing that crisis. And also I'm going to combine that concept, right? We go through crisis when all of a sudden we're dealing with a partner who's got an addiction. Sometimes we've just discovered it. Sometimes, right, there's been a history of a number of years. We're kind of going back in and out of being in a partner who's got this addiction. But we still find that there's some trauma that's involved in that particular process. So we're in and out of crisis, we're in and out of different traumas. And I wanted to talk about some traumas that are experienced, in particular when we are in partnership with somebody who's got a sex addiction, because I think that'll be helpful. And I encourage you, if you've got any questions on anything that I'm talking about, please ask, because I want to make sure that you understand. What I'm going through is going to be very, very simple. It's going to be very, very I'm just touching the surface is all. So I want you to know that and understand that I can't go super, super deep. Okay. So remember, I'm looking at this through the attachment lens perspective. And the fact of the matter is as human beings, we are wired and we are born wanting to be connected. We want that human connection. So what happens when we're going through that betrayal process, when our partner has particularly a sex or porn addiction, is all of a sudden there's a real disruption. So this connection that we have with this person has been drastically altered and it's threatened. And so we experience an attachment wound. And as a result of that attachment wounding, we have a flood of emotions and our experiences become very overwhelming. And oftentimes we as the partner then make these loving attempts to go in to reestablish this safe and secure connection. We want to reestablish or maintain this connection. But sometimes our safety seeking attempts aren't the healthiest. And I want you to understand that oftentimes they're driven by the fact that we are in crisis and that we're also experiencing trauma. So I'm going to talk about some specific things that happen. So remember, in a crisis period, it can be anywhere from 3 months to even a year. Our whole goal during that time, and just briefly as a reminder, is to help with the emotional regulation, to help you feel like you've got your feet back under you again, to kind of understand what's going on, to validate your experiences and your feelings, and to help you kind of sort through how to manage the crisis. And that, as a therapist, that's what I'm there to do. Remember, partners can do everything during a crisis period, from, trying to be so emotionally dysregulated, right? Because I'm trying to get my partner to, to pay attention or to show me that you care. Do you really love me? All the way to, I'm trying to be the perfect partner. So I'm going into all these behaviors, trying to make sure that you will love me and you'll stay with me. So oftentimes I do see my clients come in and they're going to say things like, am I ever going to feel better? Am I always going to feel like this? How long is it going to take? They want a number, and I wish I could give it to you, but I can't. So it's a process. And like I said, one day you're going to find that shift will happen. One day you're going to just start to notice, wait, I'm feeling different. I'm not going back into the same, hyper arousal where all of a sudden my heart rate's going up, where I've got those intrusive thoughts. I actually got through today and I didn't have one single intrusive thought. To me, that's a huge victory. So look for even those small little changes, because they're all, think of them as huge victories in the whole scheme of things. So what happens oftentimes is the partner comes in, and not only do they want to know how long it's going to take, but they don't recognize themselves. They don't recognize who they've become as a result of the experience. And so, like I've said, my goal as a therapist is to reach them where they're at, to validate their experiences, and then to guide them into managing the crisis or into how to work through the traumas. So I'm going to talk about 6 different types of traumas that occur as a result of being in partnership with somebody who's got a sex or a porn addiction. I do believe this applies to all addictions. I think some of this happens, and it's pretty much, it's applicable to all circumstances. The first one I want to talk about is discovery trauma, because this is when all of a sudden, there is that shock in finding out something about your partner. So I call it's my reality of what I thought my world was has now collided with, right, the reality of what was really going on. It's that compartmentalized, deceptive reality that my partner who's in the addiction has been maintaining. And now it feels like my life has kind of been shattered. It's almost like there's a reality incongruence. So I'm trying to make sense of, how could I not see this? How could I be so blind? Or what we'll do is we will start to question ourselves and go, oh, that's what was going on. Why didn't I pay closer attention to that? Why didn't I notice that sooner? And so some of the symptoms or some of the ways the partner's going to feel or what they're going to experience is they're going to start to experience real intense fear. They're going to start really questioning themselves. There could be severe panic. There could be a lot of horror. There's feelings of overwhelm and helplessness. And so one of my goals as a therapist is that with each new discovery, right, what we're trying to do is to help the partner work through it. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out how we can either use some of the skills and tools we've been working on to help you regulate. Let's talk through the feelings you're having. Let's get you to a place where you feel more stable. And then let's start talking about what kind of boundaries can we put into place to establish safety. And so in a future session, we're going to talk about boundaries. Like I mentioned, I think last time when I met with Scott, boundaries is one of my favorite subjects because they're so misunderstood and they're actually so easy. So maybe we'll do that the next time we meet, because I think oftentimes boundaries we look at as, gosh, they're controlling and they are, punishing. And in reality, it's all about safety. And so for me, the number one thing is, in the back of my mind is, how do we create safety around a really difficult situation? The unfortunate thing about discovery is it can happen again and again and again. And oftentimes, in an attempt to, again, create or make sure that there's safety and security in a relationship after discovery, a partner will continue to go back in, right? And start looking for more information, right? They're trying to find if there's more. It's almost like it's a jigsaw puzzle, right? There's all these pieces to the puzzle. Now they're starting to come together, and I feel like some of the pieces are still missing. So I'm going to go out searching for them. I'm going to make sure that these pieces all fit together. And it's very, very tempting to do that because our brain wants to make sense of things. Our brain likes to connect the dots, and it doesn't like it when we don't feel like the dots aren't completely connected. And so one of the other goals in therapy is to kind of sit, how do I sit in that anxiousness or even in those feelings of hypervigilance, right? Oh, I'm so anxious. I'm so angry. I'm so, right? I'm so fearful. How can I sit in that and just let it be? And again, we talked about the first time you and I met, Tammy, was how disclosure is an important part of that. And we're going to kind of circle back around to that disclosure in a minute as well. A formal therapeutic disclosure. Because the second type of trauma is disclosure trauma. And that can happen. So every time that the betraying partner shares something about their addiction with the betrayed partner, there's that aspect of deception that's coming forward again. I'm understanding now my reality wasn't what I thought it was once again. And I'm going to go back into those feelings of trauma. So it's going to be a body experience. I want to talk about that too. When I'm feeling trauma, right, I feel it in my body. And so it doesn't feel good. And of course, my brain's now going into that survival part of my brain. I'm limbic, I'm in fight, flight, or freeze, usually fight or flight if I'm in hyperarousal. And so every time my partner either starts to, sometimes they'll just dump everything on the betrayed partner. And all of a sudden, I had one client tell me that they're going to bed at night. That's when he decides he's going to share everything. And so for her, she can't sleep at all, and he's snoozing away. So what does that do? She's already in hyperarousal. She's already worked up. She's already got intrusive thoughts. Her heart rate's up. She can't sleep, right? She's angry. You know, she doesn't have anybody to talk it through. Her partner's sleeping, right? And it's just such a feeling of powerlessness, okay? So oftentimes when we have a situation like that, we have to remind the betraying partner that we've got to be careful about when we disclose it. That's where the formal healing disclosure comes in. But yet there are times when a partner comes to you, and if they need to know something, honesty is the best policy. Be open and honest. And as I work with betrayed partners, we work on how do you hear hard things, right? In that moment, if you're asking a hard question and there's going to be a hard answer, how can you sit in that? And how can you use your skills and tools so that you're going to be okay? So it's a real exercise in implementing, right, all of your self-regulation and some of your coping skills and tools. The other thing that will happen oftentimes is that a betraying partner will disclose bit by bit. It's almost like if I just do a little drop here and a little drop there, then somehow you'll be able to handle the truth easier. But in reality, that is one of the worst types of disclosure approaches. Because what you're doing is this staggered or these partial disclosures cause even more, the research shows, traumatic stress in a partner because they never know what's going to hit them next. They're always waiting for the shoe to drop again. And they're always wondering what else. And our brain is always going to go to worst case scenario because the brain's function is to keep us alive and to keep us safe. So our brain's going to take us into all sorts of stories, because our brain's trying to figure out, what if this happens? What am I going to do if this happens? So that is not a good way to do it. The other thing that happens is the betrayed partner does the interrogation disclosure. So I'm suspecting something. I want to make sure, again, all the puzzle pieces fit together, or my intuition, I'm finally listening to it, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start asking you, right? This doesn't make sense. I need you to tell me. And so pretty soon they find a couple of things. One is they might have more information come forward, So now it reinforces, I've got to interrogate you all the time, might set up you in that relationship with this dynamic that we do that. Or I might go in and I might interrogate and I might find that nothing new comes forward, but I still feel like I need to interrogate to make sure nothing new is going to come forward. So we can see that we can get into that pattern, and it's not the healthiest pattern. That's why I love starting out from the very beginning, allowing the betrayed partners to have the option that once you're in this place where we've got you through the crisis, where you've got the good coping skills and tools, you know how to emotionally regulate, let's get you prepared for that that healing disclosure. Let's do that as soon as we can. I find that that is also great motivation for the partners to start really using the skills and the tools that I share with them. Because once we get to that disclosure piece, and we do it in the right way, it takes away this disclosure trauma. It lessens the discoveries trauma because there's no more. It's all out on the table. So what we see when somebody is experiencing disclosure trauma is, again, more fear, confusion, worry, and they're kind of caught in that fear cycle that I talked about a couple of episodes ago. So again, the goals for therapy is I'm trying to help my clients with that emotional regulation. We're starting to work on disclosure. We're starting to kind of get them having a plan. We're working through the questions they want to ask. And we're helping them to kind of look at their safety-seeking behaviors, and are there other ways that we can go about getting this same information that's healthier, that's going to have a better end result. Okay. So the next type of trauma I want to talk about is how I perceived my reality. How I thought my world was really wasn't my world. Okay. Here's how I described it when I had it. I would tell people this: it was like my whole entire world blew up like a bomb into a million shattered pieces. And I had to go to every single piece and pick it up, analyze it, and go, do I keep it? Do I let it go? What's real? What's not real? And then slowly start to put my life back together. It's really hard because it's kind of like my whole world fragmented. And so even how the whole foundation to what I thought my life was so different. For me and for many women, it feels like when we're in this state, it's so traumatic. We go into a lot of our trauma responses, right? This is really when I'm in crisis as well. And so in this particular situation, I oftentimes feel very much alone. I feel like, I used to say, I feel like I'm on an island all by myself. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know who can relate to what I'm going through. I don't know that people can understand. And so when I've got a client coming in and they're trying to figure it out, a lot of times just listening to their story, letting them talk about what they thought life was and what it really is, and so validating their feelings and talking about what they can identify as being the same, what they do know is consistent, and we start to focus on that and build on that. The other thing too is, again, I keep going back to, having those coping skills and tools, because it can help us. I know that in my mind, I had an idea of how my life was supposed to turn out, and all of a sudden life wasn't going to turn out that way. So I had to learn a lot to live in the moment. And so those are the coping skills and tools that I really work with my clients on. Bring you back in your body now, living in the moment now. So that's another big one. I've got to sometimes, again, like I told you, we keep going back into kind of our trauma responses too. So just a lot of things like trauma breathing, mindfulness, back into your body. A lot of that just awareness of that I can just live for today. And we kind of come up with a plan on how to do that, and not doing the future tripping and getting way ahead of ourselves in that. Okay. Another area, and I've only got a couple more I'm going to talk about, and that one is that we kind of go through this body and medical trauma. So when I'm in this, what happens here is it's the trauma that I'm experiencing with my body as a result of this traumatic experience. So it can be everything from emotional to even physical. So with this, it can be everything from how I view my body as the betrayed partner, to things like it might trigger eating disorders. I may not have an appetite. I may have an appetite. I may gain weight. I may vomit. I may experience shaking. I may have hair loss. I've had people come in with that. I may not be able to sleep. I might have rage. I might have crying episodes. I could have hypervigilance. I might have muscle tension all the time. I might also be dealing with something like a sexually transmitted disease or infection. And so that is traumatic. And oftentimes I've had several clients come in and not even know about their partner's sexual addiction until they went to the doctor because they were having issues and discovered at that point that they had a sexually transmitted disease or infection. And so there's a lot of trauma in that as well. And so with that, we have to really work on helping them kind of supporting their physical body. I start with that. We've got to make sure you're healthy. That's number one. So I have some clients that will periodically even go and be tested. They just want to make sure that they're safe. Sometimes I'll have them go see a medical doctor. You know, sometimes we've got to support your physical body because there might be more going on. So even sometimes going in and doing blood work, I might recommend to my clients, we want to make sure that we can support your physical body that way. And then we start working on how we can support some of the emotions that are creating, because I do believe in the mind, body, spirit connection. So I look at my clients from that perspective, and we start to identify the emotions and kind of noticing where you're holding in your body. So we do some of that processing in session to help. So, and there's a lot we can get into on that one. And the last one I want to talk about is just the fact that we go through trauma because externally, my world outside of me might change dramatically. So I go through this external crisis. So this is kind of some of the, what we call the just changes to everyday life. This can be everything from short-term to long-term. Some clients will go through a separation, right? And I might go through, we call it a healing separation, you know, in our office. Maybe we're trying to get everybody to kind of emotionally regulate and start doing their work before we bring everybody back together. It could be everything from where am I going to sleep? What room am I going to sleep in? Who's taking care of the kids? If we're separating, how's that going to look? How do we manage the children? It's the finances. It's all of the little parts of our everyday living that get impacted that we don't realize. And every time we turn around, it's there because we can't ignore it. And so again, that can throw us back into trauma. So with my clients, we have to work on what are some of the stressors that you're experiencing. And we oftentimes sit in session and problem solve and figure out, okay, what are some of those safety boundaries we can put in place around this? What are the logistics? How is this going to look like for you? I've even had some couples do in-house separations, which I think is very, very difficult. It's manageable and doable, but we have to, in this area, we have to be very specific because there's a lot of, if we're trying to create separation so we can work on our own healing for a short time and get kind of emotionally regulated and stabilized, then it takes a lot of extra work. When I start to go through and actually, you know, there's some research that shows there's 13 different areas where there's trauma experienced by the betrayed partner. I've only gone through 5 of them with you, and you can see how extensive that is. But I think it's helpful to understand that there's so many layers to this. And oftentimes when I share that with a client, then it helps them go, okay, I understand that what I'm experiencing is normal for somebody who's having had this type of an experience. And just normalizing it in that way helps them to feel like I am not broken. It's not, I am not bad, I'm not broken, you know, and I'm not going to always feel that way. And so I always try to give my clients a message of hope that with not only can we get through crisis, we can get through the trauma and we can get to the other side of it. And life can start to feel back to the new normal again. And so I always like to put it out there because I know when I was going through what I was going through, I needed that every so often. I needed somebody who had gone through it to tell me that life was going to be okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of my ideas. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love this. And you know, because I talked to so many. In fact, I was, emailing with somebody earlier today, and it was a female partner, and she felt so alone and so isolated. And who do I tell? And like all of those things, and and the shame she was feeling. You talked earlier, the shame of how did I not see this, and why have I stayed even though he's continued, so all of those things. When you're talking about the external crisis and even the therapeutic separation within the house, I was like, yeah, and you still have to navigate if you've got kids, or how do you share the space, or every little thing of like you're having to look at all aspects of your living because it's shifted, and so like that adds an extra layer, even though it's necessary and can be very healing, whether it's a physical or a in-house separation. It's still more, and somebody who's already kind of overloaded with things, just talking through the pieces of how do I navigate this, and getting support to do that, I could see being really important. The body medical, I hear all the time, the autoimmune stuff, lots of autoimmune. Like like there should be research on this, because I think it's the chronic post-traumatic stress. It's like it's constantly there. I think the Bessel van der Kolk talked about the body keeps score, and I have this feeling, and I don't know, there's no research, so this is like, but my suspicion is like, I think partners pick up on that gaslighting on a cellular level, and they have the trauma and they have the body reaction, even though their head doesn't know it, like there's this body connect, even though the brain is disconnected, because the addict is still going, no, the sky is green and you should believe that, so I that's a very real thing. And I hear, unfortunately, all the time too, where I went to the doctor and found out I had an STD, and they had no reason to, if their partner hadn't been acting out. So, and for a lot of partners, unfortunately, there's shame around, I have an STD, and it's not your fault, but like just telling somebody it's not your fault, it doesn't internalize that message. So it really does take, the community of supportive people. The fragmented reality, we talk often about how the addict has known what they were doing for years, decades, and so the partner, like day one is the discovery, and then they're going back and looking at every piece. Like you said, I have the visual of all these fragments of my life, and was that real? I have to look at that piece. Was that real, or was that part of the lies and manipulation? And it's just so overwhelming and challenging, but it isn't all or nothing. And so it does require looking at each piece, like he can still really love, I would say he and she, but he can still really love you, and he still is acting out. And the compartmentalization that an addict can do, like that's how they live, it isn't understood by a partner. So it really is, a huge shakeup. The disclosure trauma, and you are exactly right. I talked to somebody else today, and they had done, this was a male, and he said, I wish I'd called you earlier. And I was like, I wish you had too, because she was interrogating, and he felt like he needed to tell her, and she is absolutely looking for safety. I 100% get it. But you mentioned something, and I want to because you said it, but it really is, you have to have your coping skills. So asking questions, and do I need to know this? Early on, you don't have the support, you don't have the coping skills, so it ends up being more traumatizing. You gave a beautiful, like, here's how we create that space so that you have coping skills, that you can ask a difficult question, why you're asking it, that it's necessary to ask it now, rather than waiting till you have your therapy session to ask it. Like, that's very different than, I've just learned about stuff I've gotten dumped on, and now I'm going to interrogate you because I think you're still lying, and probably true, or at the very least, doesn't have full recall yet, because that's so compartmentalized. So those compartments are really tightly locked up. So it creates a horrible experience for partners. But having the ability to not, seek the perceived safety of, I'm going to find out everything. I'm going to find out everything now because I want to know everything. When they can't unhear it, they can't unsee it, it's very challenging. I mean, I get both sides of it, but I feel horrible for betrayed partners who, have had too much and can't unhear it. And the discovery trauma, like, when people call me, particularly when the addict is calling me and they said, we did disclosure. I said, was it disclosure? Was it therapeutic disclosure? Or was it discovery? Well, usually it's discovery, where the partner has found something out, which has led to the whatever, sharing more information in a non-therapeutic way. But yeah, I mean, I like, this is so all encompassing. I can't even imagine that there's so many more. I like your puzzle analogy too, of like looking for more pieces. I thought, and you're also looking for the picture, because you're going, I don't have the box. I don't know what the picture is supposed to look like. And I think I'm missing pieces. It's like, there's that much chaos going on, for partners. Do I have all the pieces? They don't seem to fit together. I mean, I don't even know what this is I don't know what this is going to look like, when I put the pieces together again. So, and the other term I loved, I wrote it down too. I write notes. Reality incongruence. Like, I haven't heard that term like that, but there really is that shift of like, my reality of what I thought I had, and the grief around that of like, what the reality that I thought I had is not the reality that I had. The partner that I thought I had is not the partner that, that I really have. That doesn't make it all bad, but it just means that, wow, like I'm it's the plates, when there's an earthquake, the plates shifted, and I'm sitting here tottering because I don't know, how it's all going to settle. So it's very disruptive on so many levels. So, but I love too that you're offering hope that there's a path. This is the normal journey. Unfortunately, no partner ever signed up for this, but unfortunately, this is where you're at. But this is a path, and there is help, and there's more help than. I mean, you are there to help people. There are other people that are there to help people. You didn't have the benefit of that, so I can imagine how difficult this was, for you. With 1,000 pieces and no one there with a basket going, here, let me help you put the pieces together again.
Yeah. I want to just kind of validate what you said about the hope piece and that life can get better. This last week, I had a client come in and she was sharing with me just the way that she and her partner now, as they've worked through, our particular program, and they've been going to group, and she's really applied the Prodependence approach and all of that. We've done the formal healing disclosure. We've done all of that. And she just said, we have connected in a way, and now we approach things in a way. She goes, we never would have prior to this. And so we were able to talk about the fact that we don't want to go through what we've been through. Absolutely. But can we, in this moment, look at where we've come and have gratitude and be so grateful for how we're better, how we're doing things in a healthier way. And to me, that's where the healing piece of this occurs, is that I can finally see that my life is actually going to be better. My relationship with my partner, my attachment is healthier. It's in a better place. And we may not have gotten here without having to go through all of this other stuff, the disclosure and the discovery and all of that was a part of the journey that got us here. So I do want to really emphasize that, because I hear that, frequently. The other thing that I want to come back around to is the fact that there's this gap, right, between when I've got disclosure or I found discovery and when I have formal disclosure, right, the healing. And that gap is so hard to sit in, that space right there, when I'm the partner. Because oftentimes what they want is they just want to know it all now. I've got to know it all now. And there's so much frustration when I say to them, yes, we're going to get you there. I promise you, I'm going to get you there. And so the reason why, if your therapist hasn't told you this, the reason that we don't go right into this formal healing disclosure is you don't have the emotional regulation yet that's going to help you get through it. And if we go and we do it again, it can still be traumatic. So I don't want to take my client, the betrayed partner, through this formal disclosure and come out at the other end, and it was so traumatic, right, that I've done more damage as a result of that particular experience. There's been more damage done. And so I really appreciate my clients because they follow what I tell them to do. And when they get to the other side of it, they do see the wisdom in it. But I want to just validate that it's a hard place to be when you're waiting for it. Because for some people, I've had some clients, they've waited for a year, right? And some clients, it's, a month or 3 months. I mean, that's a long time to be in this space of unknown, right? Like you said, there's this reality incongruence. My life has been shattered. I don't know what's true. And really, our brain just wants to know the facts. I want to know what's really true so I can start to reestablish a life that I can make sense of.
But I think it's both the partner needing to have the emotional support and regulation, but the support, to have a plan, so that there really is. But it's also the addict because, like I said, it's so compartmentalized, and
Yes.
you will end up with, I hear, unfortunately, multiple disclosures because there were pieces that were left out, or they're still acting out, or whatever. So you want the containment for the addict, that the behavior has stopped, that they are able to explore and identify in a truthful manner. We have people that, like we've had a client recently, I heard about it, where at Seeking Integrity, where, he had his timeline. And then he shared something in group and it wasn't on his timeline. So the group was able to go, hey, that needs to be on your timeline. It wasn't that he was lying or withholding, it just didn't connect. And so helping the addict come to that place where they're able to connect that, to have worked with a therapist, to be, be able to be truthful, have peer support, all of those things. Okay, now the addict is in a good place. The partner is in that supported space. There's a plan, then a formal healing therapeutic disclosure, sets the foundation to move forward. And yeah, I didn't grow up wanting to be an addict. I didn't, but the benefits, the blessings that I've received, because it taught me how to live life in an integrous way that I couldn't have done before. I didn't have the tools. So with couples too, it's like nobody signed up for this. Nobody thought this was going to happen. But man, if you're on a healing journey and you can be together and be vulnerable and share and be connected and be honest, that's what we're supposed to be, not the compartmentalized. And I'm only going to tell you so much because you're going to be really mad at me if you knew everything. So
right, which is so unfair to the partner. It really is. And I realize that the addict or betraying partner believes that they're doing the best for their partner who's going to be hearing the hard news, but in reality it's not. And so that's why we tell them, even after formal healing disclosure, like you said, because things don't get so compartmentalized, if something new comes up, where we're at, we teach them, you've got 12 hours. You've got to tell them within 12 hours, more information's come up. At that point now, we're in this process where the partner can sit in it and hear it, right? And it's going to create trust, the fact that if something else comes up, you're sharing it with me. And you're sharing it with me quickly, and you're not holding on to it. So, and that's very, very helpful.
Yeah. And no partner wants to hear it, but they would rather hear it than discover it themselves,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have a question. My abusive partner is now gone, but he literally said after betrayal, I didn't love anybody that was, including me. At the time, I was shocked and didn't say anything, but he put me down a lot. Told me I was so jealous and childish and many other bad things. I never said any bad words back, but now sometimes I think, why didn't I say or do this? I do journal about the things that I want to say now, but do you have some more tips on what to do?
Okay. And I'm understanding, if I understand that right, sounds like it was I want to just validate that what you went through was really awful, because when you're dealing with a partner who's really not taking accountability, right? The one that's betrayed you and they've not taken accountability. And instead, what they often do in their own shame, redirecting it back out on you, making it about how you're bad, you're childish. There's a lot of pain in that. And also helplessness and hopelessness. And so that's a lot, to feel and to experience. And so the question is other than journaling it, I didn't say what I needed to say. I didn't put a voice to it, is what I'm hearing. The question is, and how do I work through it? I do love journaling, but I do believe that there's something to be said. In fact, we just talked about this in my group, and that is we need to share it with other people. We need to share our story. And there's something healing in that. So, for example, I've got 11 women in my group. And so when they share their story, right, all of a sudden they're getting empathy from other people. People are connecting dots for them, because it's all, they want the support, the person sharing their story and putting the words to it and saying it out loud. There's just something so therapeutic about that. And there's going to be emotions that you're going to experience, and to be surrounded by people that are helpful. Oftentimes when they come into session with me, we do empty chair work. So I have them read the letter to an empty chair, right, as if that person's there. And we do some different variations of that, right? I might have them, if they're willing, to sit into that chair and even say what it is they would have hoped their partner would have said back to them, or have their partner acknowledge, right, the pain in the way you would want it acknowledged. Sometimes there's just something about that, our brain, when we go through it and we're doing the exercise, there's something kind of, again, healing about it, but it also helps us kind of process what we need, helps us to identify more of what we need. And oftentimes I'll tell my, the partners I work with, so your betraying partner couldn't provide it for you. So let's figure out who can provide that. Now that we've identified it, who can you go to? Who can you go to who will listen to you because you didn't have a voice? Or let's say you just needed somebody to tell you you're a good person, right? That's what you needed from your partner. So who do you have in your life now that you can go to that helps you, who validates you and helps you recognize, your worth? And so I would work with my partner identifying what is it that you needed to have heard, and now how can we go have that need met, maybe other ways. And honestly, again, because I do work with a lot of trauma stuff, eventually, when you're ready, I would probably do some deeper trauma work on that. I happen to be trained in EMDR. So I'm kind of attachment focused, that's a lot of attachment wounding that happened in that. This is the person that is supposed to be the person who loves you the most in the world, who's supposed to have your back and be there for you. And when they say such horrible, cruel things, it's very, very difficult. I also work with my clients. I am certified in hypnotherapy, so I do some guided imagery exercises that, believe it or not, the brain does not understand the difference between reality and what, imagination. So the example being, I hate scorpions, okay? I happen to live in an old orange grove, and scorpions love orange trees, citrus trees, okay? So we have them a lot around my house. So I can think about a scorpion because I've been bitten numerous times, or I can see a scorpion and my brain will respond the same way. So what I often do with my clients is I have an exercise that if you don't have the opportunity to resolve things with a partner, because I didn't in my case, then I can take you through an exercise where we use imagination. We picture or imagine having a conversation. There's some steps I take you through. And believe it or not, there is a sense of resolution in doing just a simple exercise, guided imagery exercise like that. So that's some of the ways. I also tell my clients, if you didn't feel like you had a voice, then do things with your voice. Go and sing, right? If you feel like screaming, go get in your car, shut the doors, and make sure nobody's around. You're not driving your car, and just scream really loud and have it come from your gut, right? All of that, just letting it out because it's just been buried in. You haven't been able to say it. So I remember going through all of my stuff and turning on music really loud in my house. To me, it was empowering music about me being empowered, and singing at the top of my lungs and dancing. And in the moment, it helped me kind of release some of those emotions, and I felt better. And I just want you to understand it's a process, and it does take time, but find a therapist who's got the tools and who uses creativity, because I really like creativity. You might even need to do some art therapy with it. I think that's another beautiful way to work through things. And so hopefully that's helpful and gives you some ideas. And if you have any other specific questions, feel free to reach out and ask.
Those are all great. And so if you're in Arizona, she's licensed in Arizona, reach out to Family Strategies in Mesa, Arizona, where scorpions live, apparently. No, I've got some up
Yeah,
by me too, but I'm in
a
Arizona too.
lot.
But yeah, but here's the deal. You deserve to have support and love. And
Oh,
part of me is, I mean, I hate what you've gone through. And I hope that you lean into the support and
mhm,
understand that none of that was true. That, you know, you aren't childish, and you were, like you said, I
mhm,
never said bad things. You know, how sad for your partner that
mhm,
this is that I don't love anybody. Like, what an
mhm.
empty life for your partner.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for you that you have the opportunity to connect with other people in a meaningful way, because you deserve to have healthy support and someone who is there for you and that can be with you and be a partner for you. So
Mhm.
I'm journaling is a really powerful thing. I love what you were sharing too about the visualization and things. I hadn't connected the dots with this, but my amazing therapist had me go back to abandonment wounds, one of my
Mhm.
biggies. And it was like reaching back to my 8-year-old self. And
Mhm.
like, there are moments when that comes back to me, and it is so real. Well, where I'm, you know, where I'm coming alongside as an adult, my 8-year-old self, so
Mhm.
empowering to be able to, you know, to support that.
Mhm.
But I'd never connected the dots about how that
Yeah,
was a visual thing,
yeah,
and very
yeah,
real, hugely transformative
yes.
for me. You know, something that I needed and did not get at the time. And you know, no harm, no foul. But you know, anyway. So okay. Next question. I've heard 12 hours and 24 hours for givable time between slips shared with
Mhm.
betrayed partners. Can you share why the difference? So you were talking about 12 hours for
Mhm.
remembering something on a disclosure, or did I
Uh-huh.
miss
And we
that?
even do that with slips. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Here is our rationale, okay?
Okay.
And that is when we set it as a 12-hour rule, there is less time for the addict partner to rationalize their way out of it, to talk themselves out of it, because they found that with 24 hours, they have a tendency that, you know, as time goes on, they start to kind of minimize, because addicts can do that. And they start to think about all the reasons why it wouldn't be such a good idea, or maybe it's not that big of a deal, and so then they just don't share. So the reason that we recommend 12 hours is less time for the addict to figure out, you know, to talk themselves out of it. That's basically it. There is no research backing that up. It's just basically application and what we've seen works best.
Well, and I think that's the outside edge, honestly. You know,
Mhm,
like for the addict to sit there and hem and haw and, you know,
mhm,
agitate over it for 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever, you know, like it just makes it worse for everybody. So
mhm.
I think the first time, whether it's 12 or 24, it will be at 11 hours, 59 minutes or 23 hours, 59 minutes. But hopefully it's like, you know, Debbie, I
Yeah.
come to you and go, you know, like I just had this realization, you know, and
Mhm,
I've been thinking about this. I've called my sponsor, my therapist, or whatever, but I need to share this with you. And it happens
mhm.
quicker because, you know, like getting through it quicker is helpful for the partner, but also I'm not sitting in the muck, you know, any longer than I need to either.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
and I think with all of these things, you know, it's not like, you know, at 24 hours or 12 hours or whatever, it's a magic
Mhm.
thing. It's like, what is going to
Right,
work for you? It's the
right.
agreed upon boundaries, you know, for the two of you. So,
Right. And I don't want to set the partners up for disappointment, because here's what could happen. So I want to talk about reality here. And that is, if your betraying partner who's got the addiction has a therapist who says 24 hours, then they're more likely going to listen to their therapist that says 24 hours. I'm not going to lie. And so if we go in as a partner and say, I need it in 12 hours, right? Because here's what I heard you need to do it as, it might be met with resistance. That's just the reality. Hopefully you can get to a place where you can start talking about safety, and this would be much more helpful. And you know, as a partner, you've been able to stay regulated when they come and share, you know how to take care of you, you know, then maybe as time goes on, that might be more negotiable. But I just don't want to set you up for going to your partner and saying, oh, I heard 12 hours today on a webinar and it needs to be 12, and I know your therapist said 24. So again, kind of use your therapist to support, right? And and go with that. And if you can down the road, maybe that's something that can be up for negotiation.
Yeah. And maybe you start with 24. And then I'm honestly, I always hope that it is okay. It's right at the edge of it, initially,
Mhm.
but like you said, my partner's not happy with me, but showing up with emotional
Mhm.
regulation and support,
Mhm.
and it doesn't throw everything for a loop. So I'm going to be more likely to come and go, I need to share this with
Mhm.
you, hopefully sooner for
Yeah.
both of you. I mean, that's what a healing relationship is that we're able to show up for each other. So, but I
Right.
know early on that doesn't happen. So, okay,
Yeah.
next question. D-Day was September 30th, and we're doing all the recovery activity Dr. Rob recommends. My question involves sexual boundaries. Aside from anger, my main trauma response is hypersexual behavior, and that's what I did the first few weeks after discovery. Re-traumatized myself over and over by unsuccessfully trying to create safety with sex. After
Mhm.
I discovered additional lies, it was like I snapped out of my trauma fog and realized we needed a period of abstinence. My husband is so sex driven that he almost can't connect with me at all without physical contact. He told our therapist that his idea of showing me emotional love is kissing me. This deficit leaves me feeling extremely emotionally lonely. I've often acquiesced to sex when I wasn't emotionally safe, just so I can get temporary emotional love from him. How do I balance the hypersexual trauma response I'm experiencing, boundaries around sex, and appropriate physical contact during early recovery? Thank you, amazing women, for all your help. So thank you.
Okay, so that is a big one. We could spend a whole, next webinar or the one after that on
I was
this.
gonna
Because
say, you can do boundaries
time.
next, and then this one could be
Yes,
something like
boundaries is
that. Yeah.
next time. I just want, first of all, I want to tell you that this does come up. You're not alone in the fact that sometimes we go into kind of, whether you want to call it kind of, I want to connect with my partner. And I know that when I go in and I'm sexually intimate with them, that momentarily, even or for a short while, I feel like my anxiety comes down. I am feeling more connected. I can manage some of the trauma I'm experiencing. I want to validate the fact and also honor you for the fact that you're recognizing you're doing that and that you want to show up more authentically. And that's really hard because it's a balancing act. Oftentimes, the betrayed partners will get into, and I want you to kind of check in with yourself and see, am I going into my hypersexual behavior because this is what my husband needs in order to stay more stabilized and to have a better chance at recovery and not going into his acting out behaviors? And so do I somehow think I'm helping him manage his own, acting out, so he won't? So make sure and check in on that. I think it also goes back to, you're going to have to go a little bit deeper, maybe even with your own therapist, on understanding your attachment. What's going on for you in this moment? Why do you have that need? Is this something that you've always done within this relationship? Has it come up more now with D-Day? And I'm trying to create connection now. I'm trying to feel more safe. And so there's much more to this. And I would just love to spend some more time on it and kind of go a little bit deeper on this, because I just want you to know it does happen. And for you, we've got to kind of figure out the why. Why do you do this? Is this a pattern you've had? What are you hoping, how's it helping you, right? Maybe how is it not helping you in the long run? Is there a healthier way to do it? Is there a boundary we need to place around it? I do have a client who, for her, she needs space right now. And for her partner, because he's got an anxious attachment, he's wanting to come in and hug and kiss and do all that because he's feeling anxious because she's kind of pulling away, trying to emotionally regulate. And also she goes into more of that withdrawal type of a, avoidant attachment style. So kind of understanding that is also very helpful, because that might be contributing to why you're kind of coming in and going into hypersexual behavior. And so there's a little more information maybe around that I would need to know to answer that, like, specifically, but I'd maybe go back to your therapist and just kind of explore that a little more as to, why am I doing this, right? Where am I at? How do I feel in my attachment with him? Can we somehow figure out how to connect in other ways that will then maybe lessen some of that hypersexuality And if touch doesn't feel good to you and you can't kiss, it's okay to set boundaries around that. Right now, this doesn't feel safe, right? It throws me into hyperarousal. It makes me, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I'm ready for that yet. And so showing up authentically. So we'll spend some a little more time on that in the future. I think that's a great question.
It is, and you're
Great
right. It comes up
question.
often. And I was thinking, it's okay to communicate with him that his idea of just kissing you is emotional love. Like, his emotional love can be demonstrated by respecting your boundaries. What do you need for
Mhm.
safety for you right now? And it's very difficult to talk about this stuff, but that's, I mean, communicating, setting a safe time where you go, hey, every evening we're going to spend 20 minutes just talking about where we're at with things, and it's a safety
Yeah.
zone. We're going to hold the space. If we need to take a break, we will. But yeah, because I have a feeling it's like, like I need this emotional connection, but then I feel like I've acquiesced, and so it's both.
Mhm.
It feels good in the moment, but it also feels like, oh, like
Mhm.
I don't trust him. Dr. Rob often talks about, why would you have sex with somebody you don't trust? And I don't think, from what you're sharing, is safe yet. He's,
Mhm.
is he respecting your boundaries? What do you need to do? So, and there's so many different ways we talk about on some of the other webinars too, about like, when you go back to having sex, it isn't just about, I do this, I clap my hands. It's about, sensate focus. Maybe he, maybe it's all for you and he rubs your feet with oil, or you do. I mean, it's very touch, but not
Yes.
genital sex,
Yeah.
where that's not the focus. It isn't, sex isn't intimacy. Sex addicts prove that time and again, so that there isn't intimacy in sex. I mean, it can be, but that's if somebody's
Mhm.
paying attention, they're really, connected to the other person, not just having sex for the orgasm. So,
Mhm.
so there's a
Yeah,
lot
and
to
I,
explore
I
here.
will include next time when we talk about boundaries, I will include an area on that too. So,
Great. Okay, one last question. Oh,
okay.
yeah. So, my SALA husband will be coming home from treatment on Sunday. He has made tons of progress in learning about himself and expressing empathy to me, even in our limited phone calls. But in the last week, he seems to be emotionally withdrawing and saying he's unsure if our marriage will be part of his recovery. But he's also mentioned the fear of me abandoning him. I want us to
Mhm.
work together when he comes home to build a healthy and secure attachment, because I know this is the antidote to addiction. He seems to be
Yeah.
withdrawing out of fear, shame, however. How can I foster that healthy attachment moving forward?
Great question. I think that, like I tell my clients, you might need to reassure at times. I think I like a little structure. I'm not going to lie. I like my clients to, hey, let's do a weekly check in or a couple times a week, and let's make it about connection. And let's come up with what works for us. And so, what do you need from me in this moment? What do you need to hear from me as a partner? Do you need to hear that I'm going to stay with you? Do you need me to reassure you? Or what can you share with me about your healing journey? It sounds to me like, because he is withdrawing, it could bring up for you a lot of fears as well, that I'm not sure where he's at in this as well. And you might be wondering, is he going to be there for you? Is he going to stay in the relationship as well? And so, one of the parts of moving forward for both of you is, how do I show up authentically? How do I talk about hard things? And how do we do this in a way that we're creating connection, not more disconnection? Because I think the fear is that oftentimes I don't want there to be more disconnection. So oftentimes I pull away.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can I create a structure and a framework? And so I tell my clients, my recommendation is Thursday nights before the weekend and Monday to do the week. Let's just set a timer for 15 minutes and let's just go through and share some basic things. And I always love sharing what I'm learning in my healing and recovery journey. Have I had any struggles with safety seeking or with sobriety? And we don't have to get into a lot of detail. It might be, yeah, I had some intrusive thoughts and I used, the 3-second rule and they went away. Or it's, yeah, I was tempted to go look at your phone, but I reminded myself that I can always ask you and check in. Okay. We oftentimes share just those emotions. How am I feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally with you right now? And, what's one thing I need from you in this moment? Or one way can I support you? And we share, and then we take that in over the next few days. And then we check in again. If you can get into the habit of that, then I think what that's going to do is help you guys stay more emotionally connected. And then you're not going to wonder, oh, is he pulling away and is he going to leave me? Is she pulling away and she's going to leave me? We can learn to have the hard conversations in the context of a very short check-in. And then over time, we can learn to spend more and more time doing it. So I think that's very, very effective.
I love that. It's very practical, and it goes back to communication, because addiction happens in isolation in its own little bubble. And so to be able to communicate about difficult things, which is all of what this is, and that emotional vulnerability is really important. So, but I hope he does well. I hope you do well. Somebody made a comment. Thank you both for what you do. Your knowledge, awareness, and presence means the world. So what a nice comment. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Debbie. So grateful. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. So
sounds
Matt
wonderful.
will be here next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.